Today we're gonna be reacting to the tragic life story of Macaulay Culkin. Let's get into it.
Has been a Christmas classic for Americans. Macaulay Culkin, who plays the role of Kevin, has entertained generations of families, always keeping the Christmas spirit alive. However, despite the massive success at such a young age, Macaulay never wanted this life. Being an actor was his father's dream that he forced upon his 7 children.
That's usually how it go too. The parents wanted to do something, wanted to be great. They didn't make it, so they usually push it on their kids. 7 kids too, one of y'all motherfuckers gonna be great.
Macaulay just ended up being the most successful. Before age 13, he was fed up and wanted away from the spotlight. This was the catalyst that led to one of the most tragic downfalls Hollywood has seen in regards to child stars. Drugs, arrests, public ridicule, a strange relationship with Michael Jackson. This is the story
I forgot about the
of
Michael
Macaulay
Jackson
Culkin,
shit.
the life he never wanted. Macaulay's parents, Kit and Patricia, had 7 children: Shane, Dakota, Macaulay, Kieran, Quinn, Christian, and Rory. The Culkins had a rough
Crazy part, you never heard of none of those other siblings. Damn, his brother right here looked just like him. His brother looked just like him right here.
upbringing, to say the least. They lived in a railroad apartment in a tenement on East 94th Street and 2nd Avenue in New York City. The home was barely suitable for a couple. It was just a hallway with no separating doors except for the bathroom, which didn't even have a lock. It was not an ideal environment for children, but they kept having more babies. Macaulay, who also goes by Mac, began acting at age 4, appearing in roles on stage, on television, and in films throughout the 80s. He landed some pretty big hits, like Rocket Gibraltar and Uncle Buck. But Mac didn't exactly land those roles because of an inherent passion for acting. His father's dream was for his children to star in films, because he was a dancer/actor whose career was cut short.
And that's the story with a lot of kids. When you get into like acting and like where you the financial breadwinner for the whole family at a young age like that, 4 or 5 years old, they usually tend to be fucked up. Because most kids don't work when they're 4 or 5 years old, going to working 8-9 hours a day. You running around playing with Legos and fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Batman action figures. You're not on movie sets for 8-9 hours rehearsing lines and not going to school and having no friends. I can see how that shit could fuck you up. Like, you feel like you missed out on your whole childhood, and you really did, because you was working since you was 3-4 years old.
The peak of Kit Culkin's career was being an extra on the Broadway play West Side Story in 1961 and another small role in Hamlet in 1964. He had never experienced any sort of true fame or main character spotlight that he so longed for. His career was cut short over a small incident that he could not get past.
So, doing King Lear, off Broadway.
Right.
He's playing Gloucester, way off Broadway. He's playing Gloucester, and Gloucester gets his eyes poked out.
Yeah.
So, he is so into his part, he closes his eyes. And so he's doing the soliloquy, and he's getting closer and closer to the edge of the stage.
Oh my god!
And,
Why would you?
he doesn't notice because he's
settle
so into
down.
his part.
You acting. You don't have to
And then he spills into the
impair
first
your
row
vision. Like,
and hurts himself. This is opening night, and injures himself and can't do the rest of the run of the whole show. And apparently that was like the last acting gig he ever did, because it was quite embarrassing.
Since Kit could not deal with the shame and embarrassment, he pushed his dream onto his children, starting with his firstborn son, Shane. Shane was supposed to be the actor/dancer that his father never was, so they just kind of brought Macaulay along with them to ballet classes, theater, and movie auditions. Max says that he was an afterthought. His brother Kieran also felt the same way. My parents were running a little theater, the Light Opera of Manhattan, and whenever a production needed a kid, they were like, "What age and what gender? We've got 7 of them right over here." Kieran felt that they were often used as onstage props.
yeah, they just had a bunch of kids and just used them as cattle. Like, what you need? We got 10 kids. Pick one.
To his father's surprise, Macaulay was a superior dancer, and producers were much more interested in him than
That
Shane.
lady next
He was
time.
daring, and if you can say a 6-year-old is daring, he just wasn't afraid to do anything. I mean, he'd do whatever you asked and more.
Which led him to getting booked for almost every role he auditioned for. Once he landed Uncle Buck, which generated $67 million in the box office, the family's finances began to rely on what Mac was earning. Although Kit didn't see what everyone else
Look
saw,
how they holding him like, boy, this the breadwinner right here. We gotta protect him. Fuck the other kids. And that's what happened. Whoever becomes a star, he's the star now. He's the most important one. Now, the rest of y'all get pushed to the background. It's like the same Michael Jackson effect. Nobody don't give a fuck about the Jackson 5. Michael Jackson is the star. The rest of them got pushed to the back, and he got moved up. So your parents is going to seem like they putting more time and energy and giving that kid more attention. Because they are. Because he's the star, and he's bringing in the bread.
Saw in Macaulay, he knew Mac was his ticket to Hollywood, leading them to a role that was about to change their family's life forever. After a hectic start to a family trip to Europe, writer and producer John Hughes conceptualized the idea of Home Alone. While preparing for vacation, he wrote down a list of everything he didn't want to forget, and jokingly added his children to that list. At that moment, he thought, what if I left my 10-year-old son at home? What would he do? One what if led to another, and while taking a break from packing, Hughes wrote 8 pages of notes that later developed into the screenplay of Home Alone. Since he previously worked on Uncle Buck with Macaulay, Hughes wrote the Home Alone script specifically for him to play the role as Kevin McAllister. Macaulay's blockbuster film, Home Alone, was released in November 1990 and became the 3rd highest grossing film of all time worldwide, behind...
I never knew that Home Alone was so big. Of all time. Well, back then. But even if I didn't... The 3rd grossest of all time? Home Alone. Like...
E.T. and the Star Wars.
That's to show you there wasn't much content back then.
Films. It earned nearly $500 million in worldwide box office.
Compared
its
to
huge
today,
success even gave rise to a...
Adjusted for inflation, that's like almost $1 billion today. It's almost like double today.
Hollywood
Maybe
phrase. To be home alone meant having your
I mean,
own
that
movie's
movie
box
practically
office
made $1 billion.
dwarfed by another wildly popular film. Macaulay basically became an A-list celebrity overnight.
I mean, this is it, pal. You are a bona fide star as of right now. The #1 box office movie of the weekend. Nice to have you on the show.
In that first
He
interview,
seemed
it
calm
kind of
though.
seems
He
like
seemed real calm though for a kid to be biggest star in the world. He's like, that's all good. I ain't tripping.
he isn't really fazed about the success of the film. And although he could be nervous, he probably didn't care, because this was all just a basic routine for him.
Did you have any say in whether or not you worked when you were young?
Not really. No.
And that,
Like it was after.
and I'm a big advocate of you tell your kids what to do and they do it. They don't got no say so. But this here is different. It's like you forcing them to work and bring in income for the family. That's a whole different thing than your kid talking about, oh, I want to do something else, and you know, like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. You're going to get yourself hurt. You forcing them to act.
After a while, it became, like I said, a job, and it was I never chose the projects. They were like
I mean, you could say, "Oh, that's bad. You shouldn't do that," but could you really say it's bad? Because some parents groom their kids and put them in certain things from young, expecting and hoping that one day they'll grow up and become successful at whatever they put them in since they was a kid, boxing, whatever it is, acting class, whatever. A lot of parents start from young, grooming their kids into these things, so when they get older, they can become successful. You know what I'm saying? Some kids, it don't turn out good for them in the end. Some kids, they figure it out, they make their way, and they be all right.
parents, like, essentially like chose them for me.
So they
So it
were
was
like
kind of
good news
Because
book?
on the other hand, there's plenty of kids out here that wish they could have been a movie star or been in movies, and you know what I'm saying, that been world famous. And a lot of kids would probably wish, poverty-stricken kids who ain't eating and all type of shit, wish that they could have been in his shoes, been a movie star since you was fucking 7-8 years old.
It's Macaulay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They called
You're
me
gonna buy
Macaulay.
us a new house.
yeah, there you go. And like, I never read any of the scripts. Like, I would just
Wow.
read like the lines for like the next day or whatever. Like, I would like get the gist of what the movie was about, but then I just kind of show up and hit my marks, find my light, and
must have been
recite my lines.
So surreal.
It's kind of just like, again, like, it's what you do.
Right.
Like, it's like in the same way that like kids go to like school or something like that.
That's
Like,
what I'm saying.
you fall into a routine to a certain extent.
Even like with like certain sports, like some parents put their kids in wrestling. Wrestling, you get injured a lot. Like, for example, Michael Bisping, his son, he wrestles. I was watching this podcast. He talked about his son had like 3 surgeries already. He's not even 18 years old yet. His knee, you get knee surgery, back surgery, all type of shit from wrestling, man. Fuck all that. Your body's already destroyed in high school. So some people would be like, he had his kid wrestling. His kid probably wanted to wrestle, but it's not It's destroying his body. So would he been a good dad if he encouraged him not to wrestle, even though that's something he wanted to do? So it's kind of weird, because wrestling is not something that you're probably not going to make it unless you plan to be like a UFC fighter or something like that. You're not going to make it far being a wrestler. There's no outlet for wrestling after you wrestle. After you wrestle, go to the Olympics and college, there's no outlet besides WWE unless you want to be a pro wrestler or MMA. Outside of that, you just wasted your time wrestling for nothing. How are you going to make money off of wrestling? You got to be in the WWE or an MMA fighter. So, and you banging your body up, surgeries, pulling and tugging on your neck, your back, your knees getting destroyed, man. Please.
Extent.
No choice in whether or not he was allowed to act. No choice in what roles he could play. Barely was even prompted about his roles. Macaulay was essentially just being told what to do and moving like a robot. This is where the tension between Macaulay and his father worsened. The Culkin family was not yet rich. Mac was only paid $100,000 for Home Alone, so his father knew he needed to capitalize
for a
on the
movie
momentum
that made
for them to
$500
make some
million.
huge
Oh my
money.
God!
He immediately negotiated his next film, My Girl.
I mean,
in
they
which
don't know
Macaulay
what the
got paid
movie's gonna make, but
$1.5
damn.
million. At the time, child
1.5?
labor laws allowed the child to work for 10 hours per day, but a parent or legal guardian needed to supervise them for the
10
entire
hours a
time.
day?
This
At 8
essentially
years old,
takes
you
Kit
working?
out of the workforce, giving him no choice but to take a cut of Mac's income. Plus, they had to travel outside of New York for films. Macaulay says that although he spent a lot of time with his father, they were never close.
You disliked him all through it.
Yeah, and he disliked me too. Like, we didn't like each other.
Really?
Yeah, but then all of a sudden, imagine this. Now this man.
Like I said, he
you
disliked me, I
dislike
dislike him.
and
We
he
didn't like
dislikes
each other.
you.
It's funny how you talk
now
about his
I
pops.
become the sole focus of him when I start earning. So now all of a sudden I'm like, going around the country like locked in a room with a guy who doesn't like me, kind of thing. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's.
Well, how does that? Why?
I was kind of even like relatively jealous, I
Well,
think-
sure. Oh, he was
Yes.
jealous.
I think
I
so.
could believe that.
Everything that he tried to do in his life, like I excelled at, like
But he
before
was- but
before I
he-
was 10 years old.
I could believe that his pops was a little jealous, because your pops wanted to be an actor. His whole career he was trying to make it big, and then his fucking 8-year-old son is in big blockbuster movies and he's world famous. Some parents, it's like you shouldn't be, because that's your kid and you want your kid to be great, so you shouldn't care. But I could see how that motherfucker, like, god damn, 8 years old, your son already made it, but it's all good. That's your son. You should be happy for the nigga, not hating on him.
Years old. He was a bad man. Like, honestly, he was a bad man. He was abusive and like physically and mentally. Yeah.
As if it couldn't get
That's
any
crazy.
worse, he also had to deal with the repercussions of fame. There would be times when Macaulay walked down the street only to be crowded by hordes of
I can
people.
only
One time I wore
imagine,
ski masks
especially as a
and
kid.
I was walking down the street, this guy goes, I heard him just whispering, is that the kid from Home Alone? I'm like, wearing a ski mask. Boy, I better get my plans. I better get a facelift.
One time, Mac pulled a hat low over his
Oh my
forehead in an
God.
attempt to look anonymous. A woman walked up, grabbed the cap off his head, peered at him, and said, "Yeah, it's him." And then, "You're not that cute." Mac couldn't hide
That-
from the world.
ugh.
Everyone thought he should be so happy.
That is some shit a woman would do. Like, why would you? Because they just feel like they could just do shit like that. You could just touch anybody, grab anybody, and there's no repercussions. Why would you touch this little boy, take his hat off his head? You're not that cute. One, he's a little boy. You stinking bitch. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's some shit a bitch would do. No man would do that. Just walk up to him like why would you? Like, what is wrong with you? But women they just got that privilege of just doing whatever the fuck they want and not getting punched in the face. Like, why are you taking my hat off?
So happy because of this success, but none of his siblings could truly understand what he felt. But there was one person that could relate to Macaulay, and that man was Michael Jackson. Like Kit Culkin, Michael's father, Joe
I mean, you
Jackson,
could relate,
initiated
like,
a plan to get
since
his
he was a
family
kid.
out of poverty and into superstardom. Joe trained his children to dance and sing. If they made a mistake during rehearsals, he would beat them with the buckle end of a belt, an electrical cord, or a tree branch. More specifically, their father targeted Michael,
Including
maliciously
calling him Big
teasing his
Nose.
appearance and breaking down his self-confidence. Macaulay
That's
and
why
Michael
Michael
lived a
Jackson
childhood
got
where their
that
fathers despised
fucked
them,
up nose
despite
now
needing
'cause of
them
his
to
pops.
provide for their family financially. Michael was quite literally the only person Mac could relate to. But there was one obviously weird thing about this relationship. Michael was
Obviously
33
weird.
years old, and Macaulay was 10. Over the years, Michael had befriended multiple children, inviting them and their families
Even
to
him say that. Over the years, Michael Jackson has befriended multiple children. That just doesn't sound right. That's a big grown man. It's something wrong if you're hanging out with 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds, bro. You're 35 years old. Why are you hanging out with 10-year-olds? That's not your kid. It's weird. And you bringing them to your ranch. Never like, yo.
To his infamous Neverland Ranch, a full-blown amusement park at his
It's
estate.
like-
He hung out with these children and occasionally had sleepovers. Culkin's parents
That theme park, that's the equivalent of a motherfucker pulling up on somebody, on a kid on the street with candy and trying to lure him into their car. This motherfucker got a whole amusement park to lure people in.
were fine with the friendship. Macaulay and Kieran visited Neverland Ranch often. Macaulay even says that he slept in Michael's bed about 10 times.
Why? And he's sleeping in your bed.
That's
What the
all
fuck?
these things that
It's,
people
that's
are concerned
what's so
about.
weird, nothing happened, I mean, nothing really. I mean, we played video games, we played it as
Sleep in
an
the
amusement park. Well, the thing is,
Why
the
is
thing
your
with that
parents
whole
okay
thing
with this?
Is that, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him.
Why?
It's like, I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories. And it has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario. And the thing is with
Through all the ups and downs in Michael's life, Mac was there for him. Mac never publicly bashed him. He
I
only
don't
has
know what
positive
happened.
memories of the star. In 2005, he testified
What?
under oath that all accusations of sexual misconduct were absolutely ridiculous and untrue. Home Alone 2, Lost in New
probably
York, was
didn't
the
do nothing to him,
1992
but it's just
sequel
like,
to
it's
Home
weird,
Alone
though.
that was another smash hit. Mac was paid $4 million for the film,
Alright, $4
and it
million,
earned more than
okay.
$359
We getting
million
somewhere.
in the box office. It was met with some criticism initially for having basically the same exact plot as the first one with some minor tweaks, but over the years this film has become the most iconic and beloved of the series. The monstrous success leveled up the Culkins
Michael
immensely.
Jordan.
Macaulay was officially the most successful and highest paid child in Hollywood since Shirley Temple, and still to this day I don't think there's a more iconic child star than Macaulay Culkin. His father Kit gained
definitely the
substantial
most
influence
iconic.
in Hollywood, because for studio executives to reach Macaulay, they needed to go through Kit. In 1993, Premiere Magazine rated Kit Culkin the 48th most powerful person in Hollywood, ahead of Michael Douglas and Eddie Murphy. Studio executives complained that Kit tried to use his power to seize creative control of Macaulay's movies. Because of this controlling nature, Kit was making enemies quickly. Little did they know that
believe
Macaulay
that.
Culkin's career at age 12 just peaked, and it was all downhill from here. The Good Son was a thriller where Mac plays the role of Henry, a psychopathic child who kills people. The film did $60 million in the worldwide box office, which seems like a massive step down since Home Alone, but considering a totally different movie genre and not based on Christmas, I would say it's still good numbers.
not bad.
Mac was still beloved for his acting, and most of the negative reception was based on the plot. By 1993, Macaulay was just tired and desperately told his father he needed a break. He just wanted to go to school. He said, yeah, sure. And the next thing I knew, I was on the next set doing the next thing, and it just kind of
Sure,
clicked in
sure,
my
sure.
brain.
You go to school,
okay,
sure.
there's basically
You're
nothing I
crazy.
can
You
do to
finna
make
go
this
make this
stop.
money.
I was making God knows how much money, and Kit was making me sleep on the couch, just because he could. Just to let you know who's in charge, and just to let you know
And
he doesn't want you to
it's
sleep
funny
in
how
a
you
bed.
keep calling him
You're
Kit,
not going
like-
to sleep in a bed. The Nutcracker,
Yeah, that's his
Getting
pops.
Even with
That's to show
Dad,
you the-
The
their
Page Master,
relationship.
Richie Rich. These next 4 movies
You
all
don't even
released in
refer to him as his dad.
1994, and evidently, the world was sick of Macaulay Culkin. He was cashing in an $8 million salary for each film, which is equivalent to about $16.5 million in 2023
Yeah,
value.
basically double,
Richie Rich
yeah.
was the only decently successful movie at a $75 million worldwide box office, and that's because it's basically the same format as Home Alone. It became increasingly clear that Macaulay failed to find substantial success outside of Home Alone.
It's hard. Sometimes that
my
happens.
father
You
and my
have a
mother
big
finally
movie and-
called it quits, which was one of the best things that ever happened.
And I think that's the worst thing that can happen to an actor. You get like stuck in a role, and everybody know you for this role, and they expect you to just be that character forever. It's like, bro, I'm 40 years old now. I'm not fucking Home Alone. I'm a grown ass man. It's like they just don't let it go. Like, fuck, bro.
I was able to actually walk away from the business. I even wanted to take a break for a while,
Especially now with all these like movie stars, there's no movie stars. All these characters, especially all these Marvel movies. Iron Man, for example, Robert Downey Jr. He's Iron Man now. I don't give a fuck what movie he plays in. Everybody's gonna be like, why is he not playing Iron Man? Like, his movies is never gonna be the same. It's not gonna sell as much because everybody just expects you to be Iron Man for the rest of your fucking life.
Actually, I just was like, I'm done, guys. Like, I hope you all made your money because there's no more coming from me, and it's
Really? So now, but like, I guess
I quit for like 8 years. I mean,
Yeah.
At the moment, this was the greatest thing to happen to Mac, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back in his parents' marriage. They were gearing up for a divorce and a very public battle for custody over him. He did not want to go with his father, but his mother was spending all of her money
Like,
on
I don't
lawyers
wanna go
trying
with
to
that
fight him.
motherfucker.
So the only way Mac could get access to his money was to legally take both of his parents' names off of his trust fund. He found an executor to protect and look over his finances, and was able to secure his multi-million-dollar fortune. Kit never showed up for the last day of the trial. He stole all of Mac's memorabilia, and he hasn't
His
seen him
pops
since the
ain't shit.
mid-90s.
I
It was
see
never
why
about
him and his
money for
pops
Kit.
don't
It was
get
about
along.
control. Once he lost control, he disappeared, and he brought the ship down with him. New York Magazine noted that his rapid ascent seemed less adorable and precocious the more people learned about his home life. Plus, everyone in Hollywood has a bad experience working with Kit. The result of this was that Macaulay didn't do any film roles for 10 years. So he did what all normal kids do, went to high school, but he did it for purely social reasons. He also got married at age 17 to Rachel Miner. He relished in the New York City
I don't know why he
counterculture
would do such a
lifestyle.
thing, but
He dyed his
okay.
hair pink, smoked, drank, vandalized walls and parking
And
meters.
this is
He was
and
trying
this
to
is what
live the
happens.
polar.
There's like they feel like they got to catch up on all the stupid stuff that kids do. Let me start smoking, drinking, having sex with a bunch of random hoes, doing just stupid stuff that normal teenagers would do. It's like, bro, you really didn't miss nothing. To be honest, you didn't miss anything.
Opposite experience of his childhood, and he had the money to treat everything like a hobby. The media watched his every move and criticized him. He was one of the early targets of the
6 months to
tabloid
live.
sensationalized
I
media
remember
drama
that back in the day.
famously targeted Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Paris
They was
Hilton.
just
It was so
saying
blown
some
out
shit
of
like he was
proportion,
dying.
Culkin says. I never did anything more than any upper-class, Upper West Side kid would. We weren't like all squatting in the corner shooting heroin. That quote was from 2001. A 21-year-old Macaulay Culkin thought he already made it through the toughest times in his life, and he didn't realize his darkest days were yet to come. In 2003, the 23-year-old decided it was time to return to the spotlight. Likely seeking a more mature image, he appeared in the biographical drama Party Monster, which is rated MA 15+. Mac only had one opportunity to make a grand return. Sadly, he blew it. Critics tore the film apart, with Party Monster receiving
the
an
audience
awful
liked it, so
29%
who really
on
gives a
Rotten
fuck what the critics
Tomatoes,
think?
while
They
struggling to
clearly
earn
don't be
over
knowing what they
$1
talking
million
about,
on a
especially
$5 million
nowadays.
budget. The public wasn't looking for him anymore. Macaulay found himself in a complicated situation. He was too old to appeal to a younger audience, and the audience he garnered during his childhood had outgrown him. Desperate to bounce back from the disappointment, Macaulay booked a supporting role in the comedy film Saved. The controversial film was a moderate success. More importantly, Macaulay's performance received positive
I didn't
reviews,
see
but
any
just
of
when he
those
got a
films,
little bit
so-
of positive press, he was arrested for drug possession. Macaulay and a friend were pulled over for speeding on I-44 in Oklahoma City. The police
One
found
step forward,
17
2
grams
steps
of
back.
marijuana,
That's
8
how it
Xanax
go.
pills, and 16 Klonopin, none of which were prescribed to him. At the time, people jumped to conclusions, labeling Culkin as another child star gone wrong. However, Mac believed the arrest was totally blown out of proportion, suggesting, I'm supposed to be a lot more effed up than I am. I took a certain amount of pride that I wasn't that cliche, so it was like, oh great, I gave a lot of people exactly what they wanted.
You know, everything that I do, for some reason, becomes this big crazy thing, you know, even though any normal person does it. Like, yeah, I'm a kid, I had a beer, you know, I
Yeah, and that's how it
Big
go.
deal.
Once you
You know what I'm
famous,
saying? It's not
everything you
something I
do
make a thing
is
out of or anything like that.
highlighted.
Mac didn't think he
and
had a
it's
problem. He
bigger than
didn't
what
think
it
it
is.
could get worse,
If I smoke
but
weed,
it
nobody
did.
give a fuck.
Macaulay got divorced from his wife in 2002 and began a relationship with Mila Kunis. They kept their personal lives very private. They both grew up as child stars and leaned on each other for
she
emotional
was pretty
support.
back in
They
the
didn't
day.
do press together and only rarely were photographed together, considering they dated for 7
didn't
years.
even know they
After
was together.
multiple failed attempts at coming back to the spotlight in early 2000s, he just stopped trying. Allegedly, Macaulay attempted to propose to Mila multiple times, in which she always said no. Then in 2008, he got floored
Multiple
with some
times? After the
tragic
first
news.
time, you should know,
Macaulay
alright, this
Culkin's
relationship
older
is
sister
over.
Dakota
Fuck
was
I'm wasting my
killed
time with
while
you for?
walking home from
If I'm trying to
Brennan's
marry
bar
and you say
in
no,
West Los Angeles.
the
She was
relationship
struck
is
by a
over. What the
vehicle.
fuck is-
The
you
driver
finna keep
immediately
being
tried
boyfriend
to
and girlfriend? That's the
aid.
dumbest
He
shit
was
in the
taken
world.
to the
Alright,
UCLA
cool,
hospital
clearly.
with massive
We not
head
going no
trauma
further,
and
so you might
passed
as well go
away
our
on
separate
December
ways.
10th. There aren't very many pictures of Dakota since she stayed out of the spotlight. This was devastating news for the family. But to make it worse, him and Mila broke up.
I had a horrible breakup. I had a horrible breakup. And I was
Horrible
like,
in that it made you were very sad over it.
no, I fucked up. Like, I was an asshole in my
okay.
20s.
Oh, okay,
And I'll be the first
okay.
to admit it. And that's
Okay.
kind of something that took me a long time to come out and be like, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I was a dick, and
Yeah.
I accept it, and I own it now.
Yeah.
And it's fucked up what I did. It's fucked up what I did and fucked up how I did it.
Mila kind of hints here that she may have
God
cheated
only
on
knows what she
Macaulay,
did.
or at least left him at his most vulnerable time after 7 years. After this, all of Mac's public photos were very concerning. He looked extremely skinny, unhealthy,
Yeah, I
and
remember
potentially
that
using
point when he
drugs.
was looking like
Extremely
he was
bold
definitely on the
articles were
heroin.
published, stating that he was addicted to heroin and had only 6 months
Yeah, he
to
did
live.
look
They
bad.
did not have any evidence to back up these
But, he
claims,
just gonna
only
say
that he
somebody
had been
died.
arrested for
That's
drugs in the
crazy.
past. Plus, many years later, he said, "I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't had drugs in my life at some point or another." Macaulay does admit this was the darkest time of his life. He couldn't eat all the foods he used to love eating. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't find any purpose in waking up in the morning. Then he got hit with another devastating blow when his lifelong friend Michael Jackson sadly passed away in 2009. The darkness loomed over his head for many years. He still just wanted to be left alone, but the media took any chance they could to post something about the child star who's cursed. He started a comedy musical group called Pizza Underground, where he did pizza-themed covers of songs.
Okay, I could see how you think he lost his mind. This is fucking crazy.
Nothing screams, "Leave me alone,"
Or-
and "I don't care," than putting a pizza on your face and playing a toy trumpet.
Oh,
In 2013, he abruptly moved to Paris.
I thought nobody recognized me.
Yeah.
And what it was, no, we recognize you. We just don't care.
Oh yeah,
And I was
that's
like,
better. Is
where
that
have you
better?
where have you people been my whole life? Kind of thing.
Mac was desperate to find some normalcy in his life, and he found it in France. He stayed there for 4 years, away from the cameras, away from the rumors, just walking around Paris with a baguette under his arm and blended in with everybody else. During his 4-year stint over there, his father said he doesn't even consider Macaulay his son anymore.
Yeah, after
And
he
while that
cut
does
his
seem
pops
like a
off
very
from that
bold
check.
statement from his father, I'm sure Macaulay feels the same way. The thing that prompted his move back to the United States was meeting his now wife, Brenda Song. While on the set of Changeland in 2018, Macaulay met and began dating Brenda, best known for her appearance as London Tipton on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Bonding over being child stars, Mac thought it was too good to be true. He thought she would up and leave like other women in his life. But the couple would later get engaged and seemed happier than ever. They've been together ever since. Macaulay was so traumatized by his youth, he never thought he would have children of his own. But in 2021, Brenda gave birth to their son Dakota, who they named after Macaulay's sister. His relationship with Brenda brought some new life into him. He started multiple creative projects since meeting her. A comedy podcast called Bunny Ears, multiple television roles,
That's good. He made it back out. That's good.
and voiceover parts. He even had a big acting return in 2021 for the 10th season of American Horror Story, in which viewers praised his performance. His character Mickey quickly became a fan favorite. He remains relatively active on social media and has done a lot of public interviews and podcasts since meeting her. It seems like his wife and new family gave hope to the now 42-year-old. His father is in poor health, but Macaulay refuses to let his child meet his grandfather. But with the abusive past, it's hard to blame Mac for this. Despite everything that's happened and constantly going in and out of retirement, Mac is grateful for the way his life went. Although he endured years of abuse, unfair public scrutiny, potential drug habits, and peaked at age 12, he is still grateful for the opportunities and money that came along with it. This life, he didn't choose for himself. He was born to achieve his father's dream. By the time he was 10, he had achieved everything his father never could. And since then, he's been living life on his own terms.
Or alright, that's the end of the video. We can wrap it up right there. Like and subscribe. I'll be back to y'all with another one. Let's go.